I get to count off.
Yeah, usually.
We get the new guy here, and he's counting off.
Yep, sorry.
What's going on with Liz Cheney and the Republican Party?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe Steve will know.
He's going to tell us.
Is this Sports Center or cross politics?
Hey, a little
Yes,
both.
exactly.
He noticed.
Get it.
Finally. We've been waiting for someone to just notice that. Way to go.
Yes.
Pastor Toby, Chuck Knox, I'm the water boy, and this is a Dr. Steve Hayward. Is it doctor?
Yeah, he's like super duper.
Are you like a Joe Biden doctor?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
My dissertation was a little longer than hers, but yeah.
This is going to be a good show.
Yeah, this is going to be good. I appreciate this.
See what we're doing right now.
Hey, guys, our next magazine ships out the first couple weeks in June, so make sure you subscribe.
Hey, I got a question about
Laugh,
that.
Feast.
I got a question about
magazine.
that. So let's say that I'm one of those latecomers that signs up for a magazine a little late to the game. Do I still get the back copies too?
No, but you get the next 4 copies. So that's why it's important for you. You can buy one of the back copies.
Time out. You mean to tell me if I
can buy one of the back?
So I can't get the back copies?
No. Well, you got to buy it.
But we're going to sell them.
Yeah.
But it's not included in your subscription.
You get the next 4 issues.
Yeah.
So a subscription includes the future 4 issues.
Can we get a plan that gets the back copies to the people?
I'll figure it out. But why do you?
Right.
This seems like a meeting we should have off.
This is
camera.
like Tim Tebow getting a chance above Colin Kaepernick.
No,
this
it's not.
This is wrong.
Well, stop it.
I can give you, Knox, if you want, all my back issues of TV Guide, just in case they rerun all the shows in the same order.
Do you have a Jet magazine? I'll take the Jet magazine.
No, I don't have that.
I'm out.
Yeah, so go to fightlaughfeast.com to subscribe if you want to get into the next 4 issues of the magazine. This next issue is on feasting in the presence of my enemies.
Oh, yeah.
Rosaria Butterfield, Rachel Jankovic, of course, Pastor Wilson, Pastor Toby. I have an article in there. Knox refuses to.
What? I didn't say I refuse to. I just don't.
Okay.
Is there a difference? And then Tennessee. We're going to be in Tennessee in September. Okay, we're going to have thousands of people at this conference. Politics of Sex.
Keep saying that.
It's what I do. I name it and claim it.
You're still wearing sunglasses too.
I know.
He has to.
Just for those who don't know, I've had eye issues this week, and that's as deep as I'm going to go. We don't even know what happened, but my eye. I woke up one morning and it's just swollen shut, and so Knox says the sunglasses are less distracting, which tells you a lot about my eye.
I figured with the Jimmy Carter era coming back, you're getting a head start on the Jim McMahon era coming back.
There you go.
Sports Center.
There you go.
So Politics of Sex, the conference was originally in October. We moved it to September because of the event capacity. We're really excited about our event space there. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to do breakout sessions. We're going to have up to 15 breakout sessions beyond our standard conference day on Friday. It's going to be exciting. We're going to hit politics, media, education, and business on Saturday in our breakout sessions and everything. So make sure you sign up.
I like the word breakout session.
Yeah.
Could you help us come up with a better word than breakout sessions?
You do a lot of conferences.
Yeah, especially for a conference involving sex. A breakout session has problems, I think.
See, that's what I'm trying to tell these guys. I'm with you.
Thank you.
All right. We moved it to September 9th through the 11th. Registration will be out in June.
Very important.
So you'll be able to sign up starting in June, and it's going to go fast. So we hope to see you guys there in Tennessee.
The show is brought to you by New St. Andrews College. Speaking of which, Dr. Hayward's here to speak at the commencement.
He is.
As we're recording this Thursday before graduation. We're excited to have him here for that.
Yeah.
New St. Andrews College exists to graduate leaders who will shape culture under the lordship of Jesus Christ,
which we desperately need.
And and I'm a graduate of New St. Andrews.
They don't give out coloring books. They don't give out puppies for
some hard work.
And they're not woke.
They ain't woke.
They're not woke. They don't have sleeping pods, which literally Washington State University has sleeping pods now.
Oh my goodness!
They ain't got no social distancing.
They know sex and biology better than the Supreme Court.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Also, you may know, but we actually started the very first Fight Laugh Feast scholarship this year. The first one was for young men, and we got one. He's coming.
Yeah, but it ain't good for men to be alone. I'm sorry.
Did you want to do the announcement?
There's another one coming. Okay, all right. I'll stop.
And we're going to do one for gals next year, Lord willing. So more details coming on the application process for that. But Lord willing, we'll have 2 Fight Laugh Feast scholarships going, one for men, one for women.
We got a great dude who we gave the scholarship to this year. Excited about him coming and meeting him.
You better work out.
But check it out. New St. Andrews.
You better be there all 4 years.
NSA.edu.
Yeah.
come to Moscow, Idaho.
Have you guys been following the whole vaccine rollout?
Yeah, it scares me to death.
Yeah.
This really. Well, you showed me this video earlier, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't. You gotta watch it.
Free fries when you get vaccinated. I got vaccinated. You're saying I could get this? These delicious fries. Wait a minute. But there's also a burger element to this. Let me check with Bill Neathart. Is it too early in the day to eat a burger? No. This could
Wasn't
be
New York City trying to outlaw big gulps a couple years ago?
I want you to look at this and think about, again,
Hot dogs too.
Oh, that's right.
some people love hamburgers, some don't. We want to respect all ways of life. But if this is appealing to you, just think of this when you think of vaccination. Vaccination.
Now, this is the same guy that was
we have right
doing
now
this.
is outstanding given the challenge we're facing right now. This is a reminder that for a lot of people this is manageable, Chuck, that it could feel like the flu when handled right and if people don't have those underlying conditions. Go about your lives, go about your business. This is not so far something that you get through casual contact. There has to be some prolonged
It's not like
exposure.
AIDS.
There's a strange kind of approach avoidance, to use a psychological term here, in the federal response. It was deny and underestimate for a while, then it seemed to pick up in the last few days, but it's still not materially what it needs to be. You need to really have some direct contact. You need to have the kind of exposure that you wouldn't get casually on the subway, for example. This is a disease that does not live long on a surface. Certainly on most surfaces like metal, plastic, a desk, a kitchen counter, a subway pole. It's only a matter of minutes before the disease dies. It's not people in the stadium. It's not people in the big open area or conference and all. It's people close up to each other. Some places like Italy are doing mass school closures. That's not on the menu here.
Not on the menu.
Not on the menu.
French fries are on the menu.
Scenario where that could happen, of course, but is it anywhere near to where we are now? No. If you're under 50 and you're healthy, which is most New Yorkers, there's very little threat here. This disease, even if you were to get it, basically acts like a common cold or flu.
Wow.
My goodness.
Steve, after you.
Well, I mean, de Blasio is, to call de Blasio a Marxist mayor is an insult to Marxists because he's actually much worse than that. And the amazing thing is he's not just an incompetent lefty, but he's way behind the curve. I mean, as we know today, eating a cheeseburger is an offense against planet Earth, according to the Greenies, right?
Right.
And then French fries. Now, this is a funny thing. You know, we're all old enough to remember that when the French were being difficult 15 years ago, we referred to them as freedom fries.
Ooh.
And lately, have you noticed, if you saw these stories, and of all places, the New York Times, the president of France and a lot of the leaders of France had said that radical left-wing theories from American universities, in particular critical race theory, are a threat to France. And I say, this is wonderful. We can call them French fries again. It shows you where we are.
It all circles
French
back
are going
around.
to save America and are more clear-headed than the president of our president. It's an amazing thing. But
Wow.
So this video, remember, this was back in February, March
Of 2020.
This little clause.
But the French fries one is from this week.
Yes,
Right?
that's correct. That's correct.
All right. Yeah,
so before the whole, I guess before the lefties figured out how they could use the coronavirus politically, this is how they were talking.
Right.
This is okay. So I don't know if you guys remember this. Back in the day, when marketing changed, it became cool because black people are really number one consumers. They consume a lot of materials like shoes, TVs. I mean, they really are. They number like Nike makes their marketing, cars,
That's kind
stuff
of
like
a
that.
stereotype, though, huh?
But hey, we buy stuff. That's what we do, you know. So, but what happened was there wasn't a whole lot of marketing towards us.
Okay.
And so marketers were like, man, if they're buying stuff, how do we make stuff that appeals to them so we can get some of that money over here too? And so they started shucking and jiving. So you remember Chrysler came out all of a sudden, everything was on 20-inch rims. The black dude gets out with the hip hop music. Even McDonald's started making music. My way, you know, everything started and every industry started shucking and jiving to try and get black people to buy into their, because they're like, man, they spend money, let's get the money over here. This is shucking and jiving to try and get you to get the vaccine. Right, this is what they're doing. And the fact that he's using French fries and burgers after he tried to outlaw sausages and hot dogs
on
and
federal
big gulps,
federal property.
And now he's in federal property breaking his own law to try and get you to get a vaccine. I'm like, I'm good.
Right.
What is it? Why do you want me to have this so bad?
Well, notice too in the previous in the clip where he says this is not spread, in stadiums,
right,
and conference centers.
We aren't going to be shutting down schools.
Yeah, all this stuff. And now, is it true you can't get into a Knicks game without a vaccine?
They had a Knicks game where only vaccinated people were allowed to come in.
Right.
Well, the Knicks are doing a good enough job of suppressing their audience without any kind of vaccine.
But he's like, so what?
Yeah.
And so I think too, you can get vaccinated. They're giving out free tickets at MetLife with the Met Center.
Okay.
And as well as
if you're vaccinated.
You can get vaccinated.
What was
there.
this band thing you're telling me about?
Immunibands. So there's a doctor.
A doctor
who created these bands that actually said, we want to create a band where people can actually have their cards with them constantly
on a QR, like a QR code on the band or something.
That you walk around with. Yeah. And so people are using these to get into games. People are using these now.
It's got your vaccination
your vaccination records right on top of it. And it's designed so that people know that you're on board, that you are safe.
This is such a fun year for dispensationalists.
So you realize that a lot of these vaccines are cultured in yeast. So would those bands be the mark of the yeast? Sorry, I can't help it.
That's a great dad joke. That's a great one.
Well, I guess the question is like if you what is that yeast? If people don't have what is it called? If you have this inside of bread, they don't eat bread. They have
gluten.
Gluten. Yeah. So what are gluten people supposed to have? Yeah. People who don't have gluten, so I guess they can't have the band. Yeah. But the biggest thing for me is that if you're saying that, hey, we're creating a society where people can know that you're safe and you're not, that scares me.
Because the implication, though, is there are a lot of people who don't have the bands who are not safe.
Who are then not safe.
Yeah, and they're a threat. They're dangerous. And so now you have this. I mean, basically, there's a sort of a new Jim Crow thing going on.
Well, that was my joke.
Here's the vaccination section. Here's the non-vaccination section. Here's
the vaccinated water fountains, because you can't forget that Jim Crow and all those things that came out of that were a lot of health issues.
Right.
Because they didn't want to drink from the dirty water fountain that black people were drinking from.
Because and this is driven by Darwinism, social Darwinism, and eugenics that basically said that these lesser races are more immune compromised. They're more likely to spread disease. Right. And so health codes, many of these health codes and many of these Jim Crow laws were done in the name of safety. Yeah. And you need to be on the other side of the bus so not everybody gets your sicknesses. Yeah. And here we are again.
The only good news about this to me is that since we've been here in the recent past, we know that this is an unsustainable lifestyle. Like, this is not sustainable. So that's the good news. Like, the part of me is like, this didn't last very long and it didn't work out so well. So I'm happy about that, but we shouldn't even be back here again.
Right.
Well, one of my pieces of advice I'm going to give the graduates tonight is a rule that goes as follows. Whenever you hear a progressive come up with some nifty idea to improve the world, slow down, repeat the idea aloud slowly in a German accent and see if it still sounds as good. Your vaccine papers, please. That's where we're heading.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That's exactly right.
Well, and what's crazy about this was Biden this last week signed an executive order doing away with the Trump's executive order regarding sexual orientation in hospitals. Have you been following this?
I think so. I mean, it comes so fast and furious. Who can keep up with it?
So if you guys remember,
fast and furious, he's a hoot. Oh my goodness!
You guys,
just let him talk.
That's great. If you guys remember that Trump signed an executive order overturning the Obamacare's rule, making it that hospitals had to do transgender surgeries.
Right.
So Trump signed an executive order doing away with that,
protecting religious conscience, particularly. Right.
Yeah, religious conscience on it. And then Joe Biden just this last week signed the executive order doing away with Trump's executive order. Now, this all stemmed from what's the case? The Bostick.
It's Bostock versus Clayton County, which was argued in late 2019 and then decided just last summer in 2020. Gorsuch, interestingly, wrote the opinion for the court. Gorsuch.
And this is just real quick. This case is where they expanded the civil rights legislation to include sexual orientation and gender identity.
Here we go again, right back at the same place.
So that was the thing so in the original civil rights legislation, it included not discriminating against somebody for the purposes of their sex.
Yeah.
What Bostock did, though, was Gorsuch. I don't know. I think he must have gone to some evangelical seminary or something.
He's Episcopalian, so he's liberal or something.
Because he's doing exegesis on these words like some liberal lesbian bishop.
Seriously.
Because he's just going to do that to me?
You know what? I'm just going to save it for the next segment.
He takes the word sex and he makes that thing do contortions that should not be legal.
To include gender identity and sexual orientation.
You don't want to miss this next segment. This is going to be really interesting to figure out how he contorts this. More coming up with Steve Hayward.
Oh, you guys are bad.
On Cross Politics.
When a medical need arises, hundreds of thousands of Christians across the nation care for one another by sharing financially for those medical needs. Samaritan members pray and reflect God's love and care by providing for one another. While times continue to change, God's love doesn't. He cares for us as we are called to care for one another.
Welcome back to Cross Politics. I don't know if this segment is going to be PG or PG-13 or...
It's going to be Bible rated. How about that?
There you go.
It's Bible rated.
Rated B for Bible.
We have actually more people from Texas in the studio.
Are you from Texas?
No, I'm an inmate of California.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Do they know? Do they know you escaped?
No,
I think your rule about repeating it back in German should also should apply. Repeat it back in Californian.
Oh, yes.
But they're so trans. So how would you understand it?
Right.
How do they even know? So I was trying to explain before I was so rudely interrupted.
By time.
By music. You pushed the button. I was talking. So Neil Gorsuch pens this opinion piece on the Bostock versus Clayton County where he argued basically over this term sex from the 1964 civil rights legislation.
Yeah, because originally the idea of sex was to refer to discrimination of a man or a woman getting a job.
And the opinion just straight up admits that. Okay. What Gorsuch writes is the parties concede, both parties, that the term sex in 1964 referred to the biological distinctions between male and female.
Game over.
Okay?
Yeah. Let's go home.
That was it.
Yeah.
But they don't stop there. They don't stop there. He goes on to say, but what you really need to follow it has to do with the verb, basically, discriminate. And he's got this really crazy, language thing.
But we already defined sex between the idea was discrimination between men and women.
But he says, look, nobody disputes the fact that in 1964 sex referred to that.
Male and female.
But basically what he says is if you have to put it in context of Title VII, and he says if Title VII says you're discriminating for this reason, and then you go and you look at the situation where they were discriminated against. So one of the situations in the Bostock case was a biological male, I believe, who was working
hired at a company
taking care of dead people. What do you call it?
Mortuary.
Mortuary. And then suddenly starts showing up female.
Public school is what I was going to say.
Yes.
Mortuary.
Easy to confuse.
Yeah.
About the same thing.
It's where ideas go to die.
Yeah, souls too, apparently.
Yeah.
But then he starts showing up as a girl and gets fired. And so Gorsuch argues basically that given the fact that he would not have been let go, and there was no other reason for him to be let go other than his sex, even though sex, as it was originally understood, is not what is in view here. He said, therefore, it applies. That's basically my shorthand Cliff Notes version of the argument.
And to bring this into what Biden did, so Biden signs this executive order basically now requiring hospitals to do transgendered surgery. So hospitals are forced to, if a man comes in the hospital and wants his penis cut off, the hospital is required to cut and do that surgery.
And in the executive order, it's worded in such a way. I don't know if this is in the law or if this is just the summary of it, but it basically says, in the same way that a doctor is required to set a bone or treat cancer, you must treat this transgender surgery or hormone therapy or whatever in the same category as that, along with abortions. And I mean, it's all.
Basically what they're doing is some form of moral equivalence.
Wait.
They're saying,
if you would not deny care for somebody who came in with a broken bone, their arteries cut, they're bleeding. You have to treat them. There's a moral incumbence to do that.
So if let's say a transgender man comes into the hospital with a broken arm, you should help him.
Oh, you treat his broken arm.
You treat his broken arm.
Right.
But if a transgender man comes in and wants his junk cut off, you say no. That is not morally equivalent.
Right.
I think what we say is Bidenism amounts to making the trans run on time.
Wait, I don't even know what that means.
The train track can't run on time. The trains can't run on time.
Sorry.
I was there with you. Apparently, me and you have like the same dumb dad jokes.
It's the glasses. It's the glasses.
So, are we finding though that people who are actually hurt, who are actually in some way have a broken bone or have some sort of
are they being discriminated against?
Are they actually being discriminated against? Because
but the way that the camel's nose under the tent here, what's being wedged. This is a wedge play.
I get that.
It has nothing to do with that.
Okay. So we're not fixing a real problem.
Back up to Obamacare several years ago now, where they were insisting that, and then the case was, U.S. versus Little Sisters of the Poor.
God tells the best stories, right?
Not even Big Sisters of the Poor, the Little Sisters of the Poor. Right. I just thought the optics of the case title alone were crazy. But what was the point there? You have to have contraception insurance as part of insurance for nuns.
Yeah, right. Yep.
That and this case and several others going back years ago.
For
now,
nuns.
They are deliberately trying to trample the rights of conscience and make people of faith conform to secular leftism. And they're quite determined about this. This is not an accident.
Right. That's because there's no neutrality. People forget that the idea of sex itself is political. Like, you can't escape that. As soon as we started letting homosexual as soon as we started letting homosexuality run rampant in the country, what we started getting was laws that made you have to bake a cake, that have to go and praise and beautify what they call
wedding photographers.
Right? And then now it's coming to the point that they're legislating laws that you not only have to do these things, but you can't discriminate in your own private industries of, like, okay, if I have a healthcare business or whatever I'm doing, you have to worship the way that they've required you to worship.
Well, you got these laws coming down now that are prohibiting counseling. Christian pastors, Christian ministers, for someone who would voluntarily walk into your office and say, "Pastor, what do you think about this temptation to homosexuality?" Or I'm feeling like I want to dress up like a woman or whatever. And that's a private. It's a ministry. It's a Christian church. And
you can't even say those words.
Even in those situations, they're getting to the point now where they're saying you may not tell that person that temptation to homosexuality or transgenderism is a sin and wrong, and you may not try to encourage them to live out their sexuality according to God's word. That's becoming illegal in some places.
Wasn't it in Canada where a trans man wanted to go in a woman's spa to get a waxing? You remember that?
I remember that.
And then trace what Knox just said,
right?
Where homosexuality starts to run rampant, and now we're just, it was like 10 years ago, we got to the point where wedding photographers had to take pictures at a homosexual wedding.
Right. Yep.
And then now we're here to where a doctor has to cut a man's junk off.
Right. Yep. It's getting there.
Like,
I'm curious.
You have to follow that.
One of the things, Steve, I'm interested in your opinion on this. So one of the things that there's not much left, but there has been a strong precedent for religious freedom in our country. Sometimes even from sort of the more odd corners where, a protection, for example, of a Seventh-day Adventist who objects to a blood transfusion, for example. Right. Or there's a famous case, I believe from Oregon, having to do with the smoking or a peyote drug in Native American religious exercise or whatever, where the courts in our country have thankfully protected this sort of right of religious conscience for a long time. But it seems to me like it's been fundamentally done not because of the fear of God, but because of basically this sort of highly individualistic me God, like that we don't want to trespass because that deeply held religious belief. We say, well, then we can't trespass that, And it
If
seems
we
like,
kill that idol, we have to kill our idol.
but then what we have is, it seems like a collision, if we can use the train analogy again. We've got
The trans analogy.
We have two trains
Timing.
about to collide, where you've got the me God that says, God made me a dude, but I want to wear a dress.
Right.
Or God made me a man, but I want to have sex with other men, or whatever. And there's that sort of me God. And the Supreme Court's been saying, no, we can't violate that.
We'll protect it.
Individualism. And you got the individualism over here saying, I truly believe in this religious conviction. And it's about to collide. Who's going to win?
Good question. I mean, there's 3 or 4 different levels of that. One is the legal one, and that I'll bore people to death if we go too far off on that.
Sure.
But the other thing is we're too limited in our imagination. We're talking about, I want to be a guy. I want to be one of 57 genders.
Right.
I want to be a giraffe.
Yeah.
I mean, there are these people who call themselves furries, who dress as animals and run around on all fours, and they seem serious. But when is that going to be legally
Normalized.
recognized?
Yeah.
Right? We're not far from that. And
Do you think,
the point is, there's a war on human nature going on. That's the core of what's happening here.
I want to know the legal side that will bore everybody to death.
Well, I was going to say maybe maybe a brief version of the boring legal side. But I'm curious.
Well, all right, I can do that briefly if you want.
I am curious about the legal precedent, because you've got a lot, on this side saying no, religious freedom, RFRA, and some other things, precedents like that have seemed semi-sturdy.
Right.
And then but you've got this freight train coming but you may not tell me I'm wrong, and you must affirm me.
Well, so 2 quick points. One is, we do have a fairly robust tradition, as you pointed out, of protecting religious liberty. It's kind of an accident. There are exceptions, like the school prayer cases 50, 60 years ago.
Yep.
Though, quick digression on that. I counted this up once. 47 of the 50 state constitutions have God or the deity mentioned in their preamble.
Right.
So I've been saying for years, why don't the states pass a law saying each school child shall repeat their state's preamble at the beginning of school every day? And dare the Supreme Court to say that the state constitutions are unconstitutional. Okay, that's just a sideshow for fun.
Yeah.
You said the 2 trains running against each other is religious freedom and civil rights discrimination laws. And that's what first came to sight in the Masterpiece Cake Shop case with Jack Phillips. Because the narrow civil rights claim the gay couple were asserting is, you're a public accommodation, and we have all these civil rights laws saying you have to take everybody, like a hotel or a restaurant.
Right.
And religious freedom has always had some exceptions in the law to protect religious liberty and religious values. And those trains have been heading towards each other for 50 years, and now the collision is starting to happen on the side tracks and main tracks.
And that was always the intent, actually, with the civil rights law that passed. Homosexuals were heavily invested inside of that law.
In the Civil Rights Act.
In the Civil Rights Act. I mean, Martin Luther King's speechwriter was a homosexual. And he was fighting for Martin Luther King so that they could eventually cash in their chips.
He was already thinking about this.
They were ahead of this game way before now. And we're just now seeing it, this 50-year battle that you're talking about. So when you look at the Civil Rights Act, and we know we had something messed up. I mean, we messed up when we didn't allow slaves to be citizens in America. That was a huge mistake. So we get the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. That was a mistake. But we had to fix it somehow. Comes 1964, the Civil Rights Act. How do you then protect against civil rights being taken away and separating it from the homosexual movement, saying, man, we're going to Trojan horse that movement? Yeah. How do you do that?
Well, this maybe gets back to the Bostock decision a bit. The great surprise and disappointment is that we thought Gorsuch was going to be a person who based his jurisprudence on the old natural law and on human nature. He had gone to Oxford and studied with John Finnis, one of the most famous Catholic natural law theorists alive today. He's in his 90s now. Staunch opponent of homosexual marriage and all the rest of it. And Gorsuch was a student of his and wrote a dissertation under him. And you thought, this guy's going to be another Clarence Thomas.
Right.
So for this decision was so peculiar that there's no hint of any of that in the residual of his mind.
Wow.
I will say quickly, and this gets tangled in a hurry, but it's possible. I think it was a terrible opinion. It is possible he's setting up the left to double-cross them on affirmative action and other civil rights laws that are coming back to the court, like the Harvard discrimination against Asians case.
Right.
It wouldn't be at all surprised to say, some of that language on discrimination I used in Bostock, it applies here. It will make leftists' heads explode. I think it's disappointing in a lot of ways that it's going to sort of fall out like that, but that could happen. So it's a mess.
That is a mess because it seems like you burned down the whole house to prove a point. right? Like, I mean,
maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the best case I'm giving you. It's not a very good one.
See, okay, so when I want to talk to you for a second. So you wrote a book on Ronald Reagan and Churchill.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you kind of when we come back from our break here. What is it that, if you had to take these guys, what were they known for then, and how do you take them in today's era, and what would they currently do? Because I think we have a lot of affinity for bold men who took stands. Those are two bold, solid guys. Kind of how would we put them in today's era, and how would they deal with some of the problems that we have that we're facing right now?
And then follow up with that and tell us how to solve all of the problems everywhere.
And then,
but that'll be it.
Then
after that,
we'll play. Maybe we can do this really quick with the last 2 minutes here. If you were president for a day, how would you kind of take the situation we have now, coronavirus? How would you react to everything? How would you fix the world?
I think I'd shut down Congress and tell everybody to go home. And Calvin Coolidge used to say, maybe the second greatest president of the 20th century. Calvin Coolidge used to say, if you see 10 problems coming down the road at you, if you do nothing, 9 of them will drive off into a ditch all by themselves, and then you deal with the 10th one. And there's a lot of wisdom to that. The problem today is we make up problems where we don't have them. We take problems and make them bigger, and then we screw them up and make them worse.
So many of the problems we're trying to solve were actually the solutions of 10 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, that's very
and are creating our future problems.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then we throw another solution out, and that solution is going to be the problem that our kids are going to have to deal with.
Who was the first greatest president of the 20th century? Woodrow
Reagan,
Wilson,
I think.
Really?
No,
FDR.
Wilson's the single worst president of the 20th century.
So Reagan, you would say, would be the greatest president?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, not giving that to Trump at all, huh?
Well, he's 21st century.
Okay.
Okay. By the way, we might not be done with Trump, right? He can still come back.
He can still come mess everything up.
Right.
That's possible. More Across Politics coming up next.
Hi, I'm Robert Borton, CEO of Classical Conversations. Our most precious commodity is time. No one has ever lied on their deathbed wishing they had spent more time making money. They all wish they had spent more time creating a legacy. Our modern education system steals that legacy, steals that time from our children. That's why I'm passionate about homeschooling. That's why at Classical Conversations we want to give you more time to create that legacy, follow your passions, and glorify God. Visit classicalconversations.com for more information.
I'm still surprised we didn't get canceled from last week's show.
For real?
I know. No, that was pretty.
sure.
That was pretty unbelievable.
Facebook is off their game this week.
Yeah,
They praise
I
God.
thought we were going to be canceled from YouTube. I was ready for it.
Yeah. Hey, welcome back to Cross Politics. We're really grateful to have Dr. Steve Hayward with us. He's a resident scholar at UC Berkeley's Institute of Governmental Studies, visiting lecturer at Berkeley Law.
That's because he got his tenure back in the 80s.
I was going to say. Do they know?
A lot of them don't. It's a big place, so it's easy to sneak in a side door wearing janitor's clothing, and then you just start teaching
You got a
class.
mop?
And then,
You just have a mop as a constant.
Like, do we have
prop?
to pay the janitor? I think he teaches, so
I have had a mob after me, but it's not been easy.
He was previously a Ronald Reagan Distinguished Visiting Professor at Pepperdine University's Graduate School of Public Policy, was the inaugural visiting scholar in conservative thought and policy at the University of Colorado, Boulder. I don't know how you made it there. 2002 to 2012, he was the F.K. Weyerhaeuser Fellow in Law and Economics at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C., has been Senior Fellow at the Pacific Research Institute in San Francisco since 1991. Wow. You're the author of Age of Reagan, or Age of Reagan. Yeah. That's what's called. Yeah, Greatness.
Almost, Age of Reason. Reagan.
Greatness, Reagan, Churchill, and Making Extraordinary Leaders, the politically incorrect guide to U.S. presidents. That's great.
He's like, that was
Patriotism is not enough. That's another. Churchill on leadership, as well as you have a forthcoming book.
Yeah.
M. Stanton Evans.
Yeah.
Who we've never. Why have I never heard of him? Conservative wit, apostle of freedom. Wow.
Yeah, he's an important guy. He was my first mentor out of college 40-some years ago, and quite influential. Well known in certain conservative circles, but he died about 7 years ago and is being forgotten in a hurry, which I think is...
I'm so glad that you're writing about him, and that's coming out this summer.
Actually, it's been delayed till next spring because I...
Okay.
Coronavirus?
Yeah, actually, a lot of archives were closed that had materials I needed. I couldn't get into
Okay.
places. So.
Okay, but it's coming. It's coming.
Yes, I'm almost done.
You're married to Allison?
Yep.
And do you have kids and grandkids?
I do. I have 2 kids.
They
Yeah.
baptized?
Yeah.
Okay. The
Yeah,
grandkids
you're
baptized too?
right.
Doing the whole.
Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah, right.
Just making sure everybody getting wet. That's all.
Yeah.
And
Name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
and Wikipedia says you're really into monster trucks and monster truck rallies.
That's what Wikipedia says.
I got to know.
Must be true.
Really?
Well, I mean, it's a thing my boy was into when he was 8 or 9, and I went to a monster truck rally, and when I looked around, I realized it's professional wrestling with cars.
Yeah.
And the crowd was mostly kids and their parents. This is fantastic. And
Yeah.
it has heroes and villains, and Gravedigger always wins.
Yeah.
It's
Really? You got to be a really fun granddad. It's like,
I'm not a granddad yet. I'm old enough.
So how did it make it in that Wikipedia article? You went to one
Wikipedia's
rally?
Weird. I wrote about it. I wrote an article.
Okay.
Well, that's
And also, I was an air quality. I went to an indoor one, and they run like in the wintertime. They have an indoor arenas,
yeah.
and this has to be a huge environmental air quality violation. It's like no smoking, but we're gonna have these cars running around.
yeah.
No one can have a cigarette, but
Yeah.
So, Gabe, I wanted to ask about. This is actually picking up on the Trump question that we left off with, but I actually want to start off with the clip with Liz Cheney. If you've got that, let's just listen to her.
We have had the conference meeting. I am absolutely committed, as I said last night, and as I said just now to my colleagues, that we must go forward based on truth. We cannot both embrace the big lie and embrace the Constitution. And going forward, the nation needs it. The nation needs a strong Republican Party. The nation needs a party that is based upon fundamental principles of conservatism. And I am committed and dedicated to ensuring that that's how this party goes forward, and I plan to lead the fight to do that.
Congresswoman, how concerned are you that former President Trump might end up back in the Oval Office, and what are you prepared to do to prevent it?
I will do everything I can to ensure that the former president never again gets anywhere near the Oval Office. We have seen the danger that he continues to provoke with his language. We have seen his lack of commitment and dedication to the Constitution, and I think it's very important that we make sure whomever we elect is somebody who will be faithful to the Constitution.
Last question.
Do you feel betrayed by today's vote? I do not. I think that it is an indication of where the Republican Party is, and I think that the party is in a place that we've got to bring it back from, and we've got to get back to a position where we are a party that can fight for conservative principles, that can fight for substance. We cannot be dragged backward by the very dangerous lies of a former president.
Wow.
So she's the daughter of former VP Dick Cheney,
Right.
Liz Cheney, and
she-
the Republicans voted basically to censor her, basically strip her of her leadership roles in the
On
GOP
a committee
party.
or somebody like that, but she voted to impeach Trump, so she's one of the Republicans that joined that after the January 6th stuff.
Yep.
She kind of made headlines with kind of her joining the just sort of the explosion after the January 6th thing. And I'm curious, Steve, how much you've been following this. I haven't been very closely, but I saw. I've been following, National Review some, and some of those guys over there have been kind of cheerleading her and really defending her,
including our friend David Bonson.
I saw an article by Kevin Williamson, who I really appreciate frequently, and it was mostly just a quote of Solzhenitsyn, and I said, live not by lies, and I was, sure, okay, good. I mean, but I was struck by the fact that I don't know who did this, the editor did it, whatever. There's a picture of her masked up at a funeral for the police officer, and the caption actually said, at a funeral at the police officer who was killed during the January 6th riot.
Yeah, right.
Which juxtaposed to the quote of Solzhenitsyn, leave not by lies, the caption was a lie.
Yeah.
Because the police officer didn't die as a result of the...
We'll define what's a lie around here.
So anyways, there's obviously layers here in terms of, our appraisal of Trump and presidency, the situation of the Republican
January
Party
6th,
right now, what happened to January 6th. But what's this move by the Republicans indicate to you?
Well, I'm baffled by this for this reason. Liz Cheney had a very promising career. She's very able. And that's why she was the number 3 person in the Republican leadership, and why she's wanting to pick this sore over and over again when we should just let it all recede and move on. And we can fight about what's the best way to do it. Is it Trump style? Is it not Trump style?
Real quick, define what fight is she picking, or what sword is she picking?
Well, she wants to attack Trump for you heard her say, everyone near the White House he's peddling lies. I think a lot of Trump's claims are absolutely open to determination about exactly how this election fell out, and exactly what happened on January 6th. And so she's taking, she sounds indistinguishable from the New York Times editorial page. I always hate to speculate on personal motives, but among the many things that can be said pro and con on Trump is he did something extraordinary. He humiliated and defeated the Bush family and the Clinton family in one election cycle. I was a big fan of Liz Cheney's dad. I met him a number of times and before he was vice president, and I think he's a very bright guy. However,
good shooter.
Yes. Good shot. Right, as he'll enjoy it.
Great hunter.
Right. I do wonder if part of what's going on here is they're still mad. The sort of the Bush Cheney, that segment of Republic is still mad that Trump humiliated them, and still has a commanding position in the party.
And messed up a lot of money streams too.
Oh, absolutely. It's fantastic, I think. I'm really glad there's disruption, and I think they're trying to eliminate him so they can get back in power. There are rumors that Jeb Bush still wants to run for president, which I think is a dreadful idea.
Right. Jeb!
Yeah, Jeb, please clap. Jeb, exclamation point. Jeb. Yeah. Right, and I think that may be what's going on here, and I think it's failed for it. Because I think the party. I think a lot of people are not happy about how the Trump presidency ended. I wasn't, but I think this is all a big mistake on her part. I think, and she got what was coming to her. I hate to say it. I disagree with my friends at NR. Who are, by the way, Kevin Williamson. I just want to mention. He wears a dress sometimes.
Really?
He wears one of those tank top T-shirts that goes down to his ankles. He's an idiosyncratic guy. I'll put it that way.
Whoa!
Oh
my goodness!
I didn't need to. Know,
didn't need to know that.
We'll talk about that on a different show, apparently. So it sounds like
he's a brilliant writer.
I had no idea.
So it sounds like the Republican Party is still kind of on Trump's side, basically.
A lot of people are. Yeah, sure.
What advantage does the Republican Party have in censoring Liz? Are they kind of what tensions are they trying to hold together by doing this?
Well, so first of all, one of his great accomplishments politically was attracting so many non-voters and working class voters to the Republican Party, and there's evidence a lot of them are staying. He got the highest share of the minority vote for any Republican in 60 years, which is still making Democrats panic in their parlors.
Right.
And so a lot of people who say, we want to keep that going, see if we can get rid of bad tweets or whatever the things about Trump. The trade-off was you did lose a lot of traditionally suburban Republican swing voters, independents, especially women.
Swingers.
And Trump lost the election, this last election, in a lot of those suburbs. And so,
but did he really?
Well, we don't know. What the Liz Cheney the crowd is thinking is we can get those people back if we return to more traditional Republican appeals. And I don't think any of this is clear.
Is that traditional establishment Republicanism? Is that really conservatism?
Yeah, good question.
And that's what she said in the clip. She says, I want to return to conservative values.
To the Constitution, too.
But is that like Neil Gorsuch? Constitutionalism? I mean, what are we talking about exactly?
Well, I left this out of my previous too long speech, is Trump was, it's not right to say he was an isolationist, but he was saying no more of these expensive, ruinous wars overseas.
Right.
And that's one part. The other part is the old sort of Chamber of Commerce, pro-business republicanism. And right now, a lot of conservatives are saying, why should we be defenders of woke capitalism?
Right.
Yeah.
Which is where that's all going. Right? Why should we be on Wall Street's side when they give all the money to the left and side with the left on all these cultural issues? Right. And so this is right now is very interesting to watch.
So you've been watching what's blowing up in the Middle East last few days. I mean, how is that connected to all of this?
Oh, well, that's easy to explain. Our enemies have figured out we have a non-compos mentis president.
That's right.
Who is actively on the other side in some ways.
Yep.
And so it's open season on America's allies.
I mean, they're basically Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, AOC. I mean, they're basically supporting Palestine, right? Yeah, and all this, and that was actually coming from the Obama administration.
Yep,
right. Handed down from the Obama.
With this current climate the way it is, do you think somebody like Reagan could ever get elected?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I hear some conservatives these days say Reagan couldn't get elected today. Liberals like to say that too. I think that's wrong because I think he was such a talented politician and he knew how to talk and appeal to people and persuade. He had the same appeal that Trump did with a different style. But, what Trump did is he got back the Reagan Democrats that delivered landslides to Reagan in the 1980s.
That populist sort of thing, that populist appeal.
Yeah.
Is that, are there deep principles in that, or is it a popularity contest?
Yeah.
Oh, no, there's some deep principles there that Reagan, he was not called the great communicator for nothing, right?
Right.
He had a way of talking conservative ideas. By the way, he never used the word conservative, or very seldom did. He'd say, this is just common sense I'm talking about.
Right.
And people who aren't especially political would listen and say,
that's common sense.
It is common sense.
Okay.
So he was a genius at that.
Yeah.
And that explains a lot of his success. The other one I think is important is, and here there's a similarity with Trump with a different issue map, is he was an unconventional conservative.
Yeah.
He went against the conservative conventional wisdom on a lot of things, such as the biggest one is the Cold War could be ended. You know, Richard Nixon, Henry Kissinger, they all thought the Cold War was going to go on forever. The Soviet Union's around for at least another century. We got to learn to deal with them. And Reagan looked at these guys and said, they make missiles, but they can't make cornflakes. There's something wrong here. And he said, it's because it's an immoral system fundamentally. Reagan said this, it's against human nature, and something against human nature can't endure.
Yeah.
And so his policy was deliberate. We're going to press them hard.
Right. They can't win.
And everyone said this is a horrible idea.
This goes back to what you were saying, Knox, earlier when you were talking about this whole thing. You're saying this can't stand.
Yeah, this is sin and insanity is not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
To use one of their special words, but it's like but if you're going against the way God made the world, like you are trying to make water run uphill.
Well, there's the old line of the Roman poet Horace.
Yeah.
You can try to expel nature with a pitchfork. It will come back at you through the window.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
It may take time, but that's
that's interesting that Reagan saw that though.
Yeah.
You're from California.
I know.
You're like you said, you're an inmate of California.
California stand.
One of the I think my generation is kind of probably more distrusting of politicians. And for particular for me, for the Republican Party, like I just don't trust them when they get in office. I don't think they're going to follow through. I didn't vote for Trump the first time around. I voted for him the second time because I think he can follow through where I think he needs to follow through. But you also have you currently also in the Republican Party you have this weird desire to want to be accepted by the left, right?
Yes,
and that's why Bruce Jenner is getting traction in California. Because they're excited. Hey, look, we got our intersectionality here,
and hasn't been laughed off the stage.
Sean Hannity interviewed her,
and took it seriously.
Well, I've been saying that this whole scene is a classic case of he said, she said. But sorry, I can't. Well, I don't know. I mean, I've been joking for the last few years that California is so far gone, we deserve a governor named Gavin. And so why not have a transgender governor? I don't know. It's the bigger point. You made a very important point, which is the single biggest mistake Republicans and even conservatives, they're not always the same, but there's a Venn diagram there. The single biggest mistake of the last 50 years or more has been to try and fight political battles on the turf the liberals define.
Yes.
Exactly.
Our disposition should be, we need to change the rules. And that's one reason why people like Trump so much. He's a rule breaker and a rule changer. He could have been better at it a long time ago. But he had that disposition. So that's what's needed.
So let me ask the question, though.
Pastor Doug likes to say, we should be the ones starting the fires, not going around putting their fires out.
And I appreciate about him, but he started some fires that we didn't need to be started.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. He lacked prudence.
But that's my question. Are we only at Biden-Harris, or Harris-Biden, however you want to look at that, or Trump, or do we have another leader somewhere out there that we can look to that is like, okay, that's somebody. I mean, you're a person who wrote a book about leaders. Who are you looking at right now that says, okay, this guy, do we deserve somebody? I know we didn't deserve Ron Paul. We didn't deserve him.
Yeah.
But Rand, is there anybody else out there that has that strikes that more Reagan type middle?
Well, I tend not to like to do rank punditry, as you call it. At this point, 10 years ago, everyone thought Chris Christie was this dynamic guy.
Never liked him.
I never liked him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it turned out that it was overestimated. But right now, I think Governor DeSantis of Florida is showing some real spine and some real moxie. Yeah. And
but he still shut down Florida last year.
Not as much as other people did. He backed off as fast as he could and did it much better.
Kind of like I didn't do as much crack as the other person.
Well, okay.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's not a very good argument there for me.
Well, okay, he's not perfect, but he's done several things very well, and he's picked some fights that the only other Republican governors are not picking that many fights that they ought to be.
That's true.
I agree.
That's true.
Governor Noem of South Dakota, I'm a big fan of hers, but when she vetoed the bill saying men's and women's sports should
tranny vote,
but she signed a executive order.
Well, I think people came to her and said the reason she vetoed it is her lawyer said, "Oh, the law will be struck down in court." Her answer should have been, "Fine, let them strike it down in court. We need to have this fight.
Let's go. Let's do this."
Right? That's a rule-changing disposition, and she flinched at that. Now, I think the executive orders, people came to her and said, "You want to run for president? You want to be a running mate? You better turn around on this one because this is a slam dunk 80-20 issue."
So we have DeSantis Noem is probably what's going to be.
I don't know.
Something like that.
Is Trump going to run?
I have no idea. Okay. He may not know.
I know, right?
Would you recommend he should?
I think probably not. I think it was great one time, but I don't know.
Well, the Republicans are cleaning house for something. Yeah. You don't get rid of
Liz
Cheney, and it's like that's something that's going on there. They're cleaning the path in some way,
right?
So I don't know for what, but they're moving out somebody who might even like DeSantis. You would have a problem with DeSantis too.
Well, I don't know. Trump has said some nice things about DeSantis.
Yeah,
I think he said something about him, being a possible running mate at some point. So I think Trump's
my hope is that Trump will play kingmaker and that he'll get behind somebody.
That's what I think too. That's what I think too. So if anybody wants to follow you and keep up to date with what you have, articles or anything like that, where do they go to?
Best way is powerlineblog.com. That's all one word, Powerline Blog. We can't change it anyway. I write there every day along with 3 writing partners.
Wow, nice.
And we're the guy. It wasn't me. As my partner, Scott Johnson. We're the guys who ended Dan Rather's career at CBS. Because Scott Johnson watched that famous Texas Air National Guard story in 60 Minutes. He pulled up the documents online, says these documents are forgeries.
Wow.
And the story collapsed in 24 hours, and Dan Rather was fired in 6 months.
Wow. Took him that long.
Yeah, it did. Well, look, they're slow learners on the left.
Brother, I appreciate having you here. Thank you.
Thanks for being on Cross Politics.
Yeah. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics.
Amen.
We did not design a cookie-cutter curriculum meant to chop students into appropriately shaped submissives or snowflakes for the secular zeitgeist. We designed our curriculum the way we did because we want our graduates to be equipped to stand courageously against that destructive zeitgeist and to honor their maker and how they, body, mind, and soul, battle to save their communities and the entire Western world from our current diseased insanity. New St. Andrews College is not in the business of rubber stamping graduates for this particular job market or that particular career. We aren't happy unless our graduates are equipped to tackle any constructive cultural task anywhere, from courtrooms to hospitals to job sites to movie sets to the highest risk job and the most important setting of all, the raising and training of the next generation of immortal souls around dining room tables and in pews. The world may have gone mad, but it's not the first time. It has been saved before and by particular people, many of whom shared a very particular type of education. Augustine, Calvin, Jefferson, Churchill, and many lesser-known heroes in times of madness all had one type of education, one type of training in common. And it's the same kind of rigorous education we currently pursue surrounded by the rolling wheat fields of Idaho. By God's grace, our civilization will be saved, or rebuilt, from the smoking ruins. The men and women capable of such a task, capable of fearless joy and fiery laughter, all while undertaking such hard cultural labor, those are the kind of graduates we want, the kind we expect. They are why we exist, and why we teach what we teach. So you might call it a major in world building, or culture shaping, or a major in saving civilization. We call it classical Christian liberal arts. New St. Andrews College, saving civilization since 1994.